Kia ora, everyone, and welcome back to Stripped and Unscripted. I'm VIXEN Temple.
And I am Madeline.
And before we get into today's episode, I just want to announce that we have set up a Buy Us a Coffee. So if you want to support the show financially, the link for that is available in our show notes. Thank you so much to those of you who have donated money so far. We are beyond grateful. It is so cool to see the support that we have. The show is currently self-funded, and the money that you will be putting towards the show will be going towards some really cool things for you guys in the future. So keep an eye out on that on our socials. But seriously, thank you so much to those who have donated, whether it's $5 or $50, whatever it is, every bit counts, and we're really, really grateful for the support. So if you find the show enjoyable, if you learn something, please consider tipping us for our time and our mahi and our knowledge. Now, today's episode is going to be just as juicy as the last two. So we've just finished our two-part series talking about our thoughts on pole fit and pole fit competitions. And this episode is really going to flesh out a lot of why we have such complicated feelings towards civilians doing pole fit, because we're going to talk about #not a stripper. So I'm going to set the scene for you. Picture this. It's 2015. Snapchat has just dropped their first filters. People are sucking cups to make their lips look like Kylie Jenner. The internet is divided over whether a dress is gold or blue. And the pole fit community takes to Instagram to declare that, yes, I do pole fit, but no, I am #not a stripper. So, Madeline, do you remember becoming aware of #not a stripper?
Well, yes, I do. So I started actually pole dancing at the beginning of 2020. So that's obviously like 5 years after 2015. But I remember being really, I was like a visual learner. I was very much learning how to do pole dancing via videos on Instagram. And I would go and look for specific moves. And being that the pole industry doesn't really have standardized like terms or names of our tricks, it's really hard to find certain things. And so I'd put a name in and I'd have to scroll down through the tricks to find the actual trick that I was wanting to learn. And that meant that I was sometimes going back like years and years to find them. And majority of those posts, whatever they were, videos, photos, whatever, had that hashtag in them with like varying degrees of disrespect. Some of them were just like blatantly, like almost confrontationally putting that hashtag at the beginning of the caption. Others, it was just like in a whole bunch of hashtags, but I became aware of it very quickly. And I actually, like, to be so real, was still seeing people in the industry in Tamaki Makaurau in Auckland using the hashtag. But yeah, what about you, VIXEN?
Oh my gosh, yep. So I remember it was 2017 when I became aware of it. It was about a year before I started stripping myself. And I remember it so clearly. I was sitting on the couch in my flat at the time. It was my second last year of uni. And I just remember scrolling through Instagram, and it must have just been someone I followed. I used to follow like a lot of cosplay models. I remember someone putting up a pole video and watching it and being like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then, yeah, seeing #not a stripper and just clicking on the hashtag and looking through it and just thinking, this has to be a joke, right? Like, I wasn't a stripper at the time, and even I saw that and thought, are you fucking, like, is this a joke? The nerve, the audacity of these women doing this right now. I just was so offended on behalf of future stripper me, I guess, but it just baffled me even then. And, you know, the reason that I set the scene at the start, like, you know, bringing us back to 2015, is that I originally was going to write a video essay about #not a stripper, and I was going to look at it through the lens of like pop culture at the time of 2015 and try to understand, like, how did we get here? How did we get to a point where pole fit civilians who are doing this thing that we've touched on in the past that wouldn't exist without strippers felt this absolute diabolical need to shit on the people that they are technically in community with. And so I was looking at the pop culture at the time, and it was quite interesting to see that in 2015, Wiz Khalifa released this song called For Everybody. And the lyrics to that, there's a little bit in the lyrics that say, man, I fell in love with a stripper. Funny thing is I fell back out of love quicker. You all about that money, that shit that I throw. Just make sure you're clean. Just make sure you're clean off that pole. And around this time also, Amber Rose was becoming like quite a big celebrity. And if those that don't know Amber Rose, she was a former stripper, and she really got involved with the slut walks that were taking place. And this was also prior to the Me Too movement in Hollywood. So like Amber Rose was really doing the mahi, educating the world on like rape culture and consent and everything. And I remember when all that happened, Kanye West started dating Kim Kardashian, and he went on this interview saying, Amber was so skanky, Kim made me take 30 showers. So like, this is the pop culture at the time. This is the cultural understanding towards strippers. It was not to say that it's good now, but you've got to understand that in 2015, especially, like, it was really bad. It was not yet cool to be seen and associated with strippers. And the only reason it is now is because of the activism that so many stripper activists have done over the years. But I just think it's important to know that context, because back in 2015, I'm not defending these pole fit bitches by any means, like fuck them. But it's just quite interesting to try understand, like, these women would consider themselves feminists and they're saying this shit. And that is why it is so important for pole fit people to understand that us strippers, when we enter this space, we don't know which one of you would still be saying hashtag not a stripper had it not been for all of the activism that stripper activists have done over the years to now make it marketable for a pole fit studio to like align themselves with strippers. We come into this space, it's kind of giving like when men say like not all men, and like you're the only woman in a room full of men, and you don't know which one of those men are safe or not, because the only difference between a man that has assaulted and harmed women and ones that haven't is that they haven't. And it's the same with pole fit spaces. We're in these pole fit spaces and we do not know whether you secretly wish that we could still be saying hashtag not a stripper. You just, you know that you can't because it's become not a cool thing to do. But back in 2015, it was so loud and it was encouraged and people were so disgusting about it. It actually blows my mind. I cannot believe that this was a thing that ever happened. And we've yet to even properly talk about it as a community. And when people do want to talk about it, it's always pole fit people trying to like platform themselves to talk about it. And then when strippers want to bring it up, it's like, no, like, don't worry, like, whatever, like, that's the past, like, leave it in the past. We're not going to leave it in the past. We're going to bring it now and we're going to fucking talk about it. So, yeah, that's my little ramble. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think something that is also really, really important to remember, and why this conversation today is quite important, is that 2015 was not that long ago. 2015 was not in the like 19th century or the 20th century, and it wasn't like this long time ago thing that's just so crazy that it happened and we've moved so far past it. There's a whole lot of people who were in the industry then who are still in the industry. And it's also not just this kind of like cute little thing that was kind of happening. Like, it was almost like a movement. Like, it was huge and everyone was doing it, and it was very much this like, it was pointed. It wasn't just kind of people genuinely trying to say, oh, like, I'm not a stripper, like literally trying to identify themselves. It was pointed. It was like, oh, I would never do that. Oh, I actually respect myself more than a stripper. And the references you made to pop culture and like the misogynistic things that were said by these men, just adds to that, like, I guess, the climate at the time was just straight up misogyny towards sex workers. And let's be real, it hasn't changed that much. You're right, VIXEN. Now pole studios and people in the pole world are aware that it's not good for business anymore to shit on strippers and sex workers in that way. But there are so many people who still carry that ideology of like not being okay with poles' proximity to sex work and not wanting to be mistakenly identified as a stripper and feeling the need to like assert that in a very like, what is the word for this? In just like a really like overt, like aggressive, kind of misogynistic way. And yeah, like I agree. Like I'm just echoing everything that you already said, Vixen, but I think the pole world markets itself, and for the most part, in a lot of spaces, it is an incredibly feminist space. It is a safe space for a lot of women, but it is just wild that your feminism can exist in that space and still exclude strippers. And this is an interesting part because this is a term that people really bar up at, but swerfs. Like, it's very swerfy. It's very like, I want to be in this feminist space and I want to feel empowered and emboldened in my sexuality and my like femininity and stuff like that, but actually fuck those people that created this. I'm nothing like that. That's not me. And the juxtaposition of that is just so confusing to me and so isolating. And I think that for sex workers, it's isolating. I think that a lot of people in pole fit who aren't S workers can't maybe quite understand why that hashtag would be a humongous part of why a lot of strippers are hesitant to enter pole spaces or aren't feeling super, super comfortable, because they know it wasn't long ago that something so blatantly whorephobic was happening in the industry. But yeah, that's my 2 cents.
No, absolutely. I think something that is really important to note is that the hashtag not a stripper was actually used as a business strategy. It was a marketing campaign as much as it was an attempt for students to distance themselves. Like, even here, okay, I've pulled up a meme that I found. It's not really a meme, but a picture that I found when I was doing my research for the video essay I was going to make, and it's a woman on a pole, and it says, okay, strippers, okay, warning, this shit is cringe. It says, boys, this doesn't mean I'm a stripper, but it does mean I'm stronger than you. And I remember...
Not good.
I remember shit like that was like rampant. Even when I was becoming a pole fit person in 2018, just so many posts, like I said in the other episode, like, we're not strippers, we're ninjas. And like, no, I'm not a stripper, I'm an upside down ballerina. And just like, it is... Yeah, and especially this part here with them saying, like, boys, it's such pick-me girl shit. This is the internalized misogyny that women who said this have, that in their eyes, they see strippers as desperate for male validation, and we become strippers because we have daddy issues and we probably get abused by our boyfriends, and we're so desperate to have men love us and where. And so they're trying to separate themselves from us by being like, we do this to empower ourselves. We do this because we're strong and feminist, and we're not like those dumb stripper bitches, those slutty whores. And it's just really important to note that this was literally used by Pole Fit Studios as a marketing strategy to say, don't worry, if you sign up for Pole Fit, don't worry, no one's going to think you're a stripper. It's actually like sporty and it's good for you and it's self-care and it's actually feminist. You touched on that, Madeline. It is so important for Pole Fit people to really understand that the hashtag not a stripper was used by Pole Fit Studios in their eyes as a feminist reclamation. And you also touched on this being like an entire movement, and that's going to take us off to our second little corridor for this episode. So during my research for my video essay I was going to make about hashtag not a stripper, oh Lord, okay, I found this article that came out in 2015, and it was called "These Women Are Stripping for All the Right Reasons." And it linked this video that this, oh my God, I'm like, actually, like, my whole body is cringing and shaking. This is going to be so hard to react to, but it's so insane. It's this video that was made in 2015 by this pole fit studio, and the producer in the article is quoted as saying, pole dancing is so often associated with stripping, which isn't always true. And this is an empowering movement for so many people. Clock the word movement. And in the video, it's this video of all of these women pole dancing in a studio. They cut to these. Okay, sorry. This is actually, I feel nauseous. My skin is crawling. They cut to these women holding up signs, and the video is called Why I Dance, and the women are holding signs that say why they got into pole dance. Oh my God, I actually have to regulate my emotions. Okay, so I'm gonna read some of the worst ones. Okay. Why I pole dance? Because
Fuck, I knew this was gonna happen, eh? I've watched this briefly once, and I have to say, like, I love to see women enjoying themselves and vibing and having fun, but fuck, this was a hard watch.
yeah, okay. So because the expression of my sexuality does not negate my integrity, intelligence, or autonomy. Okay.
Yeah. Shall we break that down?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll read them and then we'll break it down. Okay. So I already just made my point very clear. I think that really speaks to how women of this era, and still to this day, she literally says, like, I pole dance because it does not negate my sexuality, does not negate my integrity, intelligence, or autonomy. But apparently, if you do it in a strip club to pay your bills, to support yourself financially, to feed your fucking family and your pets, then it does negate those things. And that is whorephobia right there. It's the double standard that it's feminist when women do it for themselves, unless that reason for themselves is to have a financial gain. Like, what the fuck? What do you think, Madeline?
I think, like, what will be interesting about this is that to someone who maybe isn't a sex worker, or someone who maybe isn't as, like, informed on, like, systemic misogyny and internalized misogyny, would maybe read a statement like that and be like, yeah, period, sis, like, I get it. Because at face value, that statement isn't, like, what would be the word? That statement isn't, like, nasty or evil. But if we look a little deeper into a statement like that, which the sort of underlying tone of what's being said in that statement and a lot of the statements in this video is it's like a justification for why they're pole dancing. It's like well, it's fine because I do it this way. It's fine because I do it this way. Because what they're not saying, but what they're implying, and what is very much the underlying, like, ideology of this is that, like, if you're doing it for the authentic reason, well, like the original reason, which is stripping, that's not all good. And so we're making this whole video to prove that the way that we do it is all good, and that you should view us differently and treat us with more respect because we do it in this way. And that's where the problem lies. The problem isn't necessarily, like, because, you know, yes, she's right in a sense. Your sexuality should not mess with your integrity. Like, it shouldn't. It never should. But that's not actually the crux of what she's saying. It's very much this justification, and that's where I have to, like, hold an issue with it, because I'm like, damn, like, you obviously have this intense internalized misogyny toward people who do this for a job. So much so that you've created this, like, video and written out this specific justification for why what you are telling yourself is the reason that it's okay for you to do it. Do you get what I mean?
No, absolutely. That is exactly the point of this video. And when people are listening to the woman's reasons of why they state this, bear it in mind that it is with the context that this video was created to distance themselves from strippers. The title of the article was, "These women are stripping for all the right reasons." And the producer behind the video said, pole dancing is so often associated with stripping, which isn't always true. And this is an empowering movement for so many people. These women are writing these things out with strippers in mind to distance themselves from that, because in their mind, stripping is gross, it's tacky, it's anti-feminist. And that is why, like you said, all of these things could actually have been written by strippers, but these are written by whorephobic women who want to not be associated with stripping, and that is why they're problematic. The statements are beautiful. And like I said, they're all things strippers could say, because strippers are the most feminist fucking badass bitches I know. But the reason I'm laughing so hard is because these women wrote this to distance themselves from stripping, which is hilarious to me, because strippers could say these exact same things verbatim, and it would just make way more sense, and it would be way more empowering if this was said about, like, if these phrases were used in regards to why strippers strip, it would be like, girl, yes, love it. But because this is women saying, this is why I pole dance and I'm not a fucking stripper, it makes me laugh so hard, because if I don't laugh, I'm gonna rage.
Yeah. It's also just like it feels very ignorant toward like the struggles of sex workers. Like it feels very like, oh yeah, again, like it's self-centering. Like I said this in the last episode, but it's like, just completely overlooking like the struggles and the stigmas faced by sex workers, which obviously was kind of the whole issue back in 2015, was no one gave a fuck in the pole industry about sex workers. But yeah, it just feels very like, like I don't want to be associated with that. I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to, I don't want to be affected by any of that stigma, and then not actually like maybe addressing the stigma at its root.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That actually takes us to the next quote that I'm going to read soon, but the point I want to make before I do is, like, these women genuinely don't see strippers as fellow women who can also experience abuse and disempowerment and misogyny on a whole separate level that they'll never understand. Whorephobia doesn't exist without misogyny. And these are women that don't see strippers as fellow women in the fight for female liberation against patriarchy. These women often, like Swerves, that's for those that don't know, sex work exclusionary radical feminists, Swerves see sex workers as allies to patriarchy, which is ridiculous, and I will definitely unpack that in a future episode. But this next quote, this one actually like made me, I'm not going to laugh at this one, because this one actually made me like quite angry, because it feels like this woman has endured abuse, potentially domestic abuse. But it says, quote, because it healed what they tried to break. And that to me, like I said, it hints that maybe this woman has experienced domestic abuse or sexual abuse or something, which is horrible. And I wish that upon fucking no one. But like, strippers are also women that are subjected to sexual abuse, domestic abuse. And not only that, as I think I've fucking mentioned in every single episode of this podcast so far, when I was assaulted sexually as a stripper, my job as a stripper was used to get the guy a lighter sentencing. And I've been assaulted outside of being a stripper. I've also experienced intimate partner abuse. And these are women that they wouldn't say it, but in their mind, strippers are asking for it. So what's your thoughts on hearing that? Because it healed what they tried to break.
Again, like I guess it's a sort of my point here, my thoughts here are similar to what I just said, but it's just completely ignoring the ways in which society tries to break sex workers, and it doesn't acknowledge like the level of privilege afforded to you as a pole dancer who is able to partake in pole in a safe environment in a studio, if you are financially able to, if you are able-bodied, if you are, mentally well enough to inhabit those spaces or have the amount of privilege that's necessary to be in there and enjoy that. It just doesn't like, it feels, it feels so oblivious, and I bet you if you brought this up to sort of like people that were involved in this video, the response would sort of be like, well, that's not what we're trying to do. That's not what we're trying to say. But it very much is that. It's especially with those, what you said, that was the first, like the leading sentence of the article about them saying that pole dancing is often associated with stripping, and it's not. It just like completely like bypasses any like acknowledgement of the privilege that they held. And I feel the same way, Vixen. Like it makes me that sentence for me holds a lot more complex feelings because I am so enraged by the idea of any woman going through abuse, and having any part of herself taken from her by anyone else. That makes me fucking angry. Um, but it is really hard as a sex worker, and obviously opinions will differ. Some people will be less or more bothered by this, but it's really hard as a sex worker and an advocate to know the depths of abuse and trauma that are handed to sex workers just via way of being a sex worker, and to hear that be used as an excuse to like partake in pole and then alongside that say that you don't want to be associated with that group of people that created it. And like if there's one thing I think about the pole industry is that like that it's just a huge group of people that could be like accomplices in this situation with us and that could aid us. And this like use of such like emotive like topics like abuse to like distance themselves from us is just like so horrible to me, because do you not think that we've experienced the same? And not to say that sex workers, it's not the pain Olympics, it's not the trauma Olympics, but it's just crazy to hear someone sort of saying these things and not understanding that like you are having a similar experience to a sex worker, and here you are just like completely shoving that from sex workers aside and purposefully sanitizing the thing that you do in order to gain respect from other people about it. It's just like, it's such a complex one, that one, I find. Like it almost makes me like frustrated with complexity. Does that make sense?
Oh no, hard, because it's so new. Like we both said, we don't wish violence upon any woman, but it hurts when there are women out there that it's not that they wish it upon us, it's just that they don't see us as worthy of respect and justice. They actually, swerves especially, see us as like, there are swerves out there that blame sex workers for the way that men treat women, which is so fucking patriarchal to me. Like, you're taking the blame off men and putting it onto a group of women who are just trying to pay their bills. And it's interesting with like this whole, again, going back to this whole video, and the reason that these women felt the need to make this video that it went viral in like BuzzFeed. I don't think people understand unless you lived through the 2010s. BuzzFeed was like the shit. It was the biggest media out there. It like, if BuzzFeed spoke about it, you'd made it. BuzzFeed made an article about this, and very much same thing. Like, these women are pole dancing for the right reasons. And it was talking, these women have entered this pole fit space, have found that it makes them feel empowered, but they've got, and what I get from that meme of like, no boys, this doesn't mean I'm a stripper. What I can imagine was happening was that men found out they did pole fit and started treating them the way they treat strippers. These women were in a way experiencing whorephobia, but instead of being allies with strippers and going, well, like, no, I'm not a stripper, but also what the fuck is wrong with that? They felt the need through their internalized misogyny to fucking shit on us and to distance themselves from us. These women were adjacent to experiencing whorephobia. And that's why it really frustrates me when like women, even to this day, like I remember when I was in the pole studio in Tamaki Makaurau only a few years ago, someone posted on the Facebook group asking for advice on like, hey guys, like, my flatmates keep making fun of me for doing polls saying that like I'm a stripper. Like, how can I fix this? And props to the Pole Fit Studio. They actually commented, like really beautifully responded to that, saying like, well, you know, like stripping is the roots of this, and they had obviously done the mahi, and they were like, no, like there's nothing wrong with that, but here's a way to explain it without further alienating strippers. And I was so relieved, because I remember when I saw that post just being so like, oh fuck, here we go. I read the comments, and let me tell you, I was ready to pop the fuck off, but I didn't have to, because people were actually really responding well to it. And I was just so damn grateful. But I think that's the thing, that like, we can actually sit here and we are being so way more kind to pole fit people than they have ever been to us by sitting here. And I think it's our autism. It's also our Gemini rising brains, that we are putting ourselves in these women's shoes and trying to understand, like, okay, this is what society was treating them like, and this is what led them to these actions, but it's wrong. We understand why they did it, but it was wrong that they did it. And I would be really curious to see whether these women that are in the video could all these years later be interviewed again and have changed their minds, because the cultural shift away from hashtag not a stripper was so strong, because again of the activism that stripper activists have done. And so, yeah, it's your complicated feelings are so valid, because I have them too. We understand that these are women who, actually in one of the videos, there was someone holding up a sign saying, because I'm a feminist. These are women that identify as feminists, whilst at the same time making an entire video to sanitize and justify what they're doing, because they were so sick of experiencing slight whorephobia and the association with strippers. So I'm going to move on to the next comment. Again, this could have been written by a stripper explaining why they've become a stripper, but this one says, because my body is mine in caps lock. And again, like, okay, so your body is yours. Absolutely. I agree. No one has the right to tell people what to do with their bodies. Oh, unless it's strippers. Because goddamn, like we touched on the other episode, no one's bodies get fucking policed quite like sex workers. Literally policed. Like literally there are countries that if I moved to, I would get arrested for being a full service sex worker. That statement is so ignorant. Yeah, your body's yours. Absolutely. But like, strippers in their mind, no, like their body, they're not allowed to claim it as theirs, because it's actually like men's, like they're just selling their bodies. Like, oh my God, again, this could have been written by a stripper. The reason I became a stripper is because my body is mine, and I think people should fucking pay to look at it, because why the fuck would I give it out for free? That's very patriarchal to me. Oh, you think men are entitled to my body just because they're a man? That's fucking patriarchal. Nah, honey, I'm putting a paywall between myself.
Yeah, period. I think that, like, again, like, it's just really, really frustrating to see, like, women who are, like, really pushing themselves as feminists be so uninformed on whorephobia, that instead of addressing the very rampant and obvious whorephobia that exists within the stigma that sex workers experience, in which they are experiencing a touch of, instead of addressing that, they would rather move themselves out of the group that are experiencing the stigma. I just think, like, and I know, I personally think it's a massive privilege, and yeah, I think it's a massive privilege to just say that you're not interested and not like bothered to follow politics. I think that that's not really like, when I hear people say that, it grinds my gears. Like, I don't really get into politics. I'm like, okay, well, that's a massive privilege. But because of that, I think that it's really important for women, and especially women in an incredibly political space like a pole studio, to be informed on whorephobia and understand that it is actually way more beneficial to all of us if, instead of just trying to negate your proximity to the sex workers, you actually fight for the sex workers, because none of us are free from whorephobia or patriarchy until all of us are free from it. And so it is just really, really incredibly frustrating to like see that happen. Yeah, I think that's kind of my 2 cents on that one. In terms of like my body being mine, yeah, it's like, it's like almost ironic to read because that's such a big contentious topic within the sex work world, is that a lot of people, and like your experience, Vixen, with going through the justice system, a lot of people equate your being a sex worker to like consent, which is not what it is. And it's really just wild to say something like that and to preface it with, well, pole dancing is often associated with stripping, but it's not actually always. And then that be the video. Because you're completely making this justification, saying the exact same thing that would be relevant to a sex worker, and then saying like, well, this is why it's okay for me to do it, and this is why we're different from sex workers because of this, when it's actually an incredibly relatable statement for a sex worker to hear you say that.
No, kia ora, like, it's so interesting that, like, you touched on this, so many feminists seem to forget that sex workers and the kink community were at the forefront of the consent movement, and like nobody understands bodily autonomy or consent more than the kink community, sex workers, and trans people. And you also touched on that these women, like, what they are doing right now this is respectability politics. This is the in-group policing that we were touching on in our respectability politics podcast episode, which if you haven't listened to, it's episode 2 of the show. But essentially, yeah, like, by doing pole, these women are in proximity to strippers and they are now being associated with strippers, and they don't want that. So they are signal virtualing themselves as like, well, these are the reasons we're doing it, which are right, because it's not for a strip club. It's not to pay bills. It's not shaking my ass in a man's face and collecting tips. Like, we're paying to do what they pay to do. And it's by signal virtualing their respectability politics, it actually ostracizes the strippers. Yeah, when you start to say that, yes, I am a part of this minority, but like I don't have the traits that are negative with that minority, so like I'm better than them, it is very dangerous and dehumanizing to that group. And when you do pole fit, you're not a minority, but you are associated with the marginalized group that is strippers and sex workers. And again, reinforcing that this video was created to distance that, to say we are allowed to do it because the expression of my sexuality does not negate my integrity, intelligence, or autonomy, because my body is mine. Now I'm going to move on to the next one. Because women's voices should never, in caps, be silenced unless they're a stripper. That's not, that last bit obviously wasn't quoted, but that's what they're getting at. Like,
So
right?
many thoughts there.
Right? Like, this is a woman holding a sign saying women's voices should never be silenced, but we are, in doing this, silencing the voices of strippers because don't listen to them, don't look at them. We're the ones doing it for the right reasons, and like, love us, respect us. And again, it's pick me girl shit. These are women asking for respect from men. Respectability politics. No, boys, I'm not a stripper. I'm actually stronger than you. Like, it's just like, oh my God, like, it's, again, patriarchy has taught us to center men so fucking much that these women were appalled at the thought that men will view them as strippers because they understand how men treat strippers. But like I said in the last episode, the way that men treat sex workers is how men feel about all women. But instead of combating that, they would rather just say, no, like, I deserve respect because I'm doing it because my voice shouldn't be silenced. So what are your thoughts on that one, Madeline?
Like, the like sentiment that like no woman's voice should be silenced is like interesting in itself outside of this context. Like, I do believe that like, I don't know, I do have like a little bit of a moral, maybe it makes me have big feelings, a moral issue with the sentiment that like I support all women's wrongs, because all women are oppressed by patriarchy. It doesn't account for the fact that there are so many intersections of marginalization and privilege, or a lack thereof privilege, that saying that no woman ever should be silenced, it just creates this like room for the most privileged women to speak over those with less privilege, and it doesn't actually create an even playing field for all women because we're all not silenced. It actually just enhances the like discrepancies in privilege that already exist, because if we say no woman should be silenced, we're actually not thinking about women who have like, okay, let's dream up someone with like a lack of privilege. Let's say like someone who is like in a DV relationship who is also a sex worker, right? That is someone who is super underprivileged. It doesn't account for the fact that if that person speaks up really loudly and screams from the top of the rooftops her thoughts and feelings and stuff, the amount of danger that she is in compared to say a white woman who is working a corporate job with a husband that loves her. Does that make sense, Vixen? Like,
Oh, you make absolute sense. My neck hurts from nodding. Like,
yeah,
you're touching on white feminism, and I'm the same. Like,
yeah,
I don't support all women's wrongs because some of you bitches are fucking transphobic. Some of you bitches fucking don't think that I should be in jail because I support myself through having sex with people. Like, it's, you are so right. You're touching on white feminism where like a lot of the women that really weaponize that, it's kind of like the same with like the I'm just a girl. Like, oh my God, can we stop fucking infantilizing ourselves? Like, we're grown ass adults, and white women especially are so, I'm not saying that women don't have struggles. Obviously we do. It's patriarchy. But a fundamental aspect of patriarchy, there's like, patriarchy is an octopus with 8 legs, and one of its legs are white supremacy. So if you're a white woman, you have more privileges than women of color. If you are a cis woman, you have more privileges than trans women. And I really encourage people to read, there's this really amazing book called, hang on, what is it called? I'm going to Google it. They Were Her Property. It is white women as slave owners in the American South. It is a history book written by Stephanie Joan Rogers. And that is a book. It is hard as fuck to read, but I really recommend white women read it because it explains why there are like, you think about the trad wife, the white woman Trump supporter. I think people really need to understand how much white women are used by patriarchy they conform to it as a means of survival, the same way that these women conformed to whorephobia to protect themselves. And that is fucking selfish. That's not feminism. If you're only out to protect yourself, you're abandoning your sisters in this movement. And no, I love that point you made. It is something that irks me too. Like, I'm going to be so real. I am a bitch that has said, like, I support women's wrongs, but you are right. Like, I don't fucking.
I think we've all said it, like we've all said it in some context as kind of like a gag, like as a joke, but like being so real, if you're doing something, if you as a woman are doing something that harms a marginalized community, I don't support you. Like, I'm sorry, just because you are a woman and just because apparently all women's voices shouldn't be silenced, I don't support that. Like, by proxy of being a woman with a voice doesn't mean that you're entitled to say whatever the fuck you want. Like, yeah, if you want to like speak up and be like, fuck dudes, fuck patriarchy, fuck misogyny, fuck all of that, I support you 100%, my queen, like be loud. But the moment that your like loud ideology that you want to spout to everyone is like harmful and inherently like problematic, that's where it stops for me. I'm really sorry. Like, and this is like there's no hate to this because like we all have to like educate ourselves and learn, and it's a journey of becoming informed. But like when you are on sort of like surface level understanding of patriarchy and feminism and whorephobia and stuff, it's really easy to buy into the whole like I support everything that women do, because the idea is that we uplift all women, but actually you sort of need to dig a little deeper than that and become a little bit more informed to understand how like those sort of blanket statements are actually quite harmful and actually don't account for a lot of the real life issues and conditions in which that different women live under, and different women live under, and the way in which decisions like that and ideologies like that, all women, blah, 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 can be way more harmful to underprivileged women than super privileged women. But yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look at fucking J.K. Rowling and Posey Parker. Like, these are women that say let women speak, but when they speak, they fucking shit on trans women. And they genuinely advocate for laws that make it harder for trans women to fucking live and experience human decency and respect. And it's white feminism when, like, the simplest way to explain white feminism is just like women thinking that their only enemy is the patriarchy, whereas there are women with so many other intersections of disadvantages that, you know, transphobia, whorephobia, ableism, racism, and my catchphrase is burn the patriarchy, and that encompasses like the octopus 8 legs of what exists under patriarchy, which is white supremacy, it's ableism, it's transphobia, it's all of these systems that wouldn't exist without patriarchy. And there are too many women out there that just think that, once we get rid of like misogyny, everything will be fine. Like it doesn't work like that. And until you've experienced other intersectionalities of oppression, you really don't understand that. So no, that was it. Like, girl, like I'm not kidding. My neck hurts from how much I was nodding when you were saying all that, because that is such a powerful point to make. And again, we've touched on in the past how like people in the pole fit world even aren't all just white women. Like they come from many different intersectionalities of other marginalized groups, but they need to understand that they aren't experiencing whorephobia, because like in this video, most of the women are white, but some of them, there's also a part of the video where they hold up like words that they use to identify themselves, and some of them are immigrants and some of them are women of color. And it's a real shame that it's just so easy for even other marginalized women to miss how much whorephobia is interwoven into those marginalizations. Like I gave a talk at Vic Uni to Dr. Lindsay Armstrong's criminology students, breaking down the systems of whorephobia and how it is built on xenophobia, racism, misogyny, transphobia, and ableism. And so if you are a part of another marginalized group, it is, especially as a woman, it is so important for you to understand how much whorephobia contributes to that, and that you should be fighting with us, not against us, because our freedoms are all intersected. They are all linked, and we're not free until we're all free. Okay. Next point, the next statement that was said, and this is, actually, I'm going to say two at the same time because they're kind of the same thing. One says, because it frees my inner power, and the other says, to empower everyone, which is quite rich because it's like, again, unless you're a stripper, because this video was created to shit on strippers. So yeah, because it frees my inner power and to empower everyone. That is a really interesting statement to make in a video that is created to distance yourself from strippers. What are your thoughts, Madeline?
So ironic to say something like that you want to empower everyone, except here you are separating yourselves from another group of women who created the exact thing that you are partaking in. I guess for these people, like a lot of them probably are under the guise that strippers didn't create pole. Like these are probably also people who believe that like Malakam or Chinese pole are like the true roots of pole dancing. But it's just I have a really hard time putting myself in the shoes of people that say things like this. Like some of the other statements I can kind of rationalize, but statements like this, I just genuinely can't understand saying something like that whilst in the same breath shitting on sex workers. And that just goes to show how people like this, with this opinion of sex workers, really truly don't view us as humans. Like, they really truly don't think that we are like sentient beings with feelings and emotions, and like that are worthy of like having a voice or a say or being protected or anything like that. And again, like at face value, at surface value, like these things can sound great. Like a lot of these surface level feminist sayings, like empower every woman and the sisterhood thing and the like women supporting women thing, at face value, these phrases seem incredible. And like, yes, like I am so keen for that. And we are all so keen for that. But we literally can't have that unless you'll actually listen to us and support us and like respect us, because we're also women. And again, it just goes to show how far the society has to go to understand that, like, whilst you might tell yourself in your mind that you view us with respect, it lies really deep in the subconscious, the like internalized misogyny and like the ideology that like you actually do have this judgment toward us. And whilst you might view yourself as a really kind and lovely person, the way that society has conditioned you is to view sex workers in this light, this like dehumanized light. And it's hard to get rid of that. And like I empathize with how hard it is to deprogram that out of your mind. But again, like, make it make sense. How can you say that you want to empower everyone and then make the first line of this video, or the tagline of this video, they're stripping for the right reasons, or stripping is always associated with pole and it's sorry, yeah, and it's not always, blah 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 blah. Like, how can you say that in good conscience and not like critically think about what you're actually saying? What was the other one, Vixen? What was the other saying? One was like, I want to empower everyone, and the other one was what?
Because it frees my inner power.
Again, like, this is like really confronting for people who feel really empowered and want to free their inner power, because I support you. I support you on freeing your inner power. And like every woman should get a chance to feel the liberation that pole can provide at times. Like I that's one of the things I said in one of the last episodes, is that I love that a lot of women come into the pole space, specifically civilian women, and they feel so liberated and emboldened and empowered by it. And I think that's beautiful. But like, at what point do we start to discuss how you empowering your like inner power or whatever it is actually further marginalizing and harming a community of people who are already in a shit ton of danger and are already like stigmatized to hell? Like, at what point are we looking outside of ourselves and saying like, can I empower myself and enjoy this and indulge in this art in a way that doesn't shit on other people? And to want to empower yourself is fine. To want to have that moment of like selfishness is fine. But when you're tying it into a video like this that exists to like separate yourselves from sex workers, like, that is exactly what you're implying. You're implying that like you want to embolden yourself, but fuck these other people. Like, fuck these other people. I don't want nothing to do with them. That's not what they're doing. They are completely not emboldening themselves. They are objectifying themselves. Blah, blah, blah. They are letting men objectify themselves. Blah, 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 blah. You know, it's like, oh man, like, you need to address that. I'm really sorry. Like, you know, if your sole thing about pole is just to like completely make it like all about you and you're not thinking about these other people, like, you need to address that. And I know that a lot of people, again, are like, it's just for me, like, it's for me to feel good. I'm like, I get it, I understand it, but like, can we not have some empathy and some real life understanding for the struggles of the people who created what you're doing? They didn't just struggle then, they struggle now. And so it's like there's so many opportunities for you to like decenter yourself for a moment and support these people, and then you can go back to like having your time and your moment and making it about you. But it really doesn't take much to just like fucking give us a crumb of support, like, yeah, or a crumb of understanding or empathy, like, or just look within and like try to address like why you say these things and like actually critically think about the words that you're saying, because while you were like, oh, it's harmless, like it's actually not harmless, it's harmful, like a lot of the time. And like, I'm gonna go there, I'm gonna do it. We faced something exactly like this a couple of months ago with someone online in the Aotearoa pole community saying, what happened to women supporting women and, the sisterhood thing. And like, that kind of ideology is so frustrating to sex workers when it's used against us or used as a way to like create proximity, like, sorry, not proximity, to create distance between us and them. It is so frustrating because, like, yeah, you're right. Where is that? Where is the woman supporting women? There's this whole group of women who are marginalized, who are like 60% more likely to be unalived than civilian women. And we would really love your sisterhood. We would really love your support. But there are so many people in the pole industry that prove time and time again that they're unwilling to give it. And so to have that used against us as a way to sort of like discredit us or, shit on a point that we're trying to make is absurd to me. It's absurd to me. And it's completely besides the point. Like, it's not even just a personal gripe that I have with those things. It's just, yeah, like, we should be supporting each other. We should be listening to each other. We should be hearing each other. And quite often those like terms and phrases are used to tone police. They are used to get us to simmer down and just support the wrongdoings that are done to us and just be quiet about it. And I find that wild to like label yourself as someone who's understands feminism or patriarchy or misogyny, and then to use phrases like that. Does that make sense again?
That makes so much sense. I couldn't fucking agree more. Like, it does start to get to a point where, people often ask me, like, what is it that I as a pole fit person can do to support strippers and sex workers? And again, like, it's a really complicated question to ask, but something I want to like make quite clear, and this is going to piss some people off, but when you are a civilian doing pole fit, in my eyes, you're whorephobic until you state otherwise, in the sense that, like, unless you are loudly supporting strippers and loudly educating yourself and unlearning whorephobia that we all have, I don't know if I can trust you. The same way that men are statistically the biggest predator I am subjected to. I have to coexist with the people that are statistically most likely to end my life. And that is even more enhanced because I am a sex worker. And so when men say not all men, that doesn't help, because as I said earlier, the only difference between a man that abuses women and a man that doesn't is that he hasn't. And when I enter a pole fit space and I am surrounded by civilians, I don't actually know. You doing pole fit doesn't say to me that you support strippers, because as we've made very clear here, the pole fit world was so insidiously unkind to strippers. This only happened 10 years ago and it still existed when I entered the pole fit scene. We don't trust you. Why the fuck should we, unless you make it very clear that we can? And you being on the pole and wearing our pleasers doesn't tell me that you're pro sex work. It tells me that you're appropriating my job. And unless you make it very clear otherwise, I don't know whether you're a safe person for me to talk about being a sex worker to. And again, it's not a personal thing. It's me. It's a very human thing to do. I am identifying you with a group of pole fit people as a civilian. And so my survival lizard brain is going, okay, are you safe or not? Like, and I'm sorry, this is going to be really hard to hear, but even if you are saying you support strippers and sex workers, there's still that part of my brain that's like, do you really, or are you just saying that because it's now become a cool, trendy thing? Like, do you secretly still wish that it was hashtag not a stripper? Are you secretly judging me for being a stripper? Are you going like, oh my God, I love that you're a stripper, but you're actually thinking like, you fucking slut? Like, and I know that sucks. Whorephobia is so deeply ingrained into our subconscious that just existing as a sex worker in feminist spaces, it's so hard. The same way that I hear my friends who aren't white talking about how when they're in a space that is predominantly white, they don't actually know if they are safe or welcome there. They don't feel themselves. They are hyper vigilant. They're not seeing themselves. They don't know. This isn't their space, you know? Like, oh, this is a queer space, but everyone's white. Oh, this is a feminist space, but you hate sex workers. Like, it's so hard to exist as any marginalized person in this world, in a world that is white supremacist and patriarchal, and anyone outside of that norm is othered. And so when we, in the past few episodes, are venting and expressing these frustrations, pole-fit civilians, you need to fucking understand that there was an entire movement to shit on us, and it was never really properly addressed or talked about. 1 minute pole-fit studios were saying, don't worry about being considered a stripper, it's a sport. And then suddenly they were like, oh, no, like we love strippers, and like stripping is the root of pole and blah, blah, blah. And the only reason they did that is because it was starting to become bad for business to be whorephobic, because of the cultural shift that sex work activists have done. And that's what I said in the last episode when I was like, we don't fucking owe you shit, because pole-fit people will act like we should fucking eat their ass and like bend over backwards and thank them for unlearning their whorephobia. We shouldn't be fucking grateful. It's owed to us because your community, whether you were a part of it in that time or not, your community once had an entire movement that further demonized us and contributed to the systematic oppression that we still deal with. So that's what I mean when I said we don't owe you shit, because you owe us. You owe us because it is our fucking community. It is our lifestyle that you have built a brand, a hobby, a career out of. We don't owe you gratitude because you are now going and undoing the harm that was declared during #NotAStripper. So I don't want to fucking hear anyone talk about how strippers should be grateful, because what the fuck?
I am living for the rage that is coming out of you right now. I could not fucking agree with you more. I think as well, like, for the people that, if there was like a middle ground between like people who support us, like love, actually genuinely like our allies and genuinely love sex workers and respect us in the pole space, and then those who like still behind closed doors would slut shame us and would hope that not a stripper would still be a thing and that was still the like ideology of the industry. There's like a middle ground of people who are like okay with strippers, like they don't necessarily have any like gripe with us, but they are sort of frustrated by the added, in their perception, work that they have to do in order to like make themselves look ethical. And that level of performative allyship is what I notice the most. I notice when people are ticking boxes in order to continue to indulge the way that they want to, and it's very obvious to me. And like maybe this is me and you, Vixen, because we are like very informed on this topic, and I can spot microaggressions incredibly easily. But I just, yeah, it's like it's sort of like it's like a stripper's intuition, shall I call it, where I can just kind of tell if you are doing the allyship because you genuinely give a fuck about these people, or if it's a box to tick. It's very obvious. And like, if I'm honest, I see it all the fucking time. I see it all the fucking time. It's not here. Like, it's not just the odd person who goes, not a stripper, fuck this. It's so present in the microaggressions and the performative allyship. And I'm not sure if it was a book that you got me to read, Vixen, or if it was somewhere else that I read it, but the more insidious oppressor is the one that pretends to be your friend, not the one that is outright hating you. And I find that really, really frustrating to watch people who will platform themselves as allies, as people who are trying to use their voice to help us, when I can tell it's not actually to help us, it's more to profit off the aesthetic of allyship. Because you're right, if we look back, hashtag not a stripper was a business thing. It was a way to make people feel comfortable coming into a pole studio and to reassure them that if they did come into the said pole studio, they weren't going to be seen as strippers or treated like strippers. And obviously now that we've had that 180 and it is financially beneficial to do sexy style, to do heels, to ally with strippers, suddenly we have this like overwhelming vibe of like box ticking and like people scrambling to make themselves look as pro sex worker as possible in order to not lose business or not be involved in online controversy. But unfortunately, like a lot of the time, it just genuinely isn't genuine. Like it's a lot of the time you can tell it's a business ploy. They might actually be doing things that are helping us, but the intentions and the motives are obvious. It is so that they can continue to do what they want to do without the repercussions that would be laid on them if they were just blatantly being like whorephobic, the way that the community used to be. And yeah, I also find it really interesting. This is maybe a side note, but I find it really interesting when me and you over the last few years have had conversations or dialogue with people that we haven't agreed with, that are civilians, that we've been kind of like, hey, this thing's not great. These people will often follow up with like a CV of reasons why they are incredible allies. Like they'll sort of address what you've said to them, whether or not they address it well, I don't know. That's to be seen. It's always different. But they will then follow up with like, we've done this, 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 and this, and this, and that's why we got allies. And so, like, it's almost like it's to reassure you, and it's not reassuring at all. It's actually really patronizing, because I did say earlier about the most insidious oppressor is the one that pretends to be your friend. But the thing with allyship as well is that you actually don't get to decide that you're an ally. You can have done things that support us and that have allied with us in the past, but that doesn't make you a blanket term ally. It's about continued work and continued education and support. If you do something that is fucked up, the things that you've done in the past that are incredible don't negate that thing that you did that is horrible.
No, I completely agree with the thing of like the worst enemy is the one that will pretend to be your friend, and just the like CV of like, well, here's the ways I've supported you, because it's giving like, no, I can't be racist. I have black friends and I marched the Black Lives Matter protest. Like, yeah, because like we're white and we fucking owe that, because, you know, our whiteness is inherently oppressive to people of color. And like, it is really frustrating when you are subjected to that, because it just feels like not gaslighting, but like, yeah, it's just a way of like dismissing any other thing that you've done that could be like, hey, here's something that you could do differently. Oh, but like I raged about this on my Instagram story when all of that stuff was happening, how much I am so sick of pole fit people, especially people that profit off pole fit, using fired up stilettos to silence any concerns I have, because you're not who fired up stilettos is for. And I said this on my Instagram story, and I've said this on this podcast, even before I joined Fired Up Stilettos, just by being VIXEN Temple, I've been blacklisted from a lot of strip clubs from my activism. My activism is for me and the stripper community. It is not so a bunch of fucking civilians can say, well, I follow Fired Up Stilettos so I can do no wrong. I can't cause harm to strippers. That shit makes me so angry. And it's been said to me on a couple of occasions. Like,
what I will say is that, like, as a sex worker, as an advocate, to raise concerns, to then be followed up with, well, these are all of the people that we support, and, you know, we work with these people closely, blah, 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 blah. It's, aside from being frustrating, it's really fucking hurtful and really fucking isolating to sort of see or sort of feel like the people that you are raising concerns with are using an organization that exists for you against you, and sort of trying to assert that they have some sort of relationship with these people that you do not, is isolating as fuck. To and this is not necessarily, I feel as though my thought process is resilient with this, so I'm able to see through this. But if someone's telling you that they actually have a close relationship, a close working relationship with a union that is supposed to be in support of you and help you in your times of need, and you are trying to raise concerns with the people that are saying this, it makes you feel really helpless, because suddenly you feel as though you couldn't even go to the one organization that exists to advocate for you outside of yourself, because these people are already in cahoots with them. And that is isolating as fuck, and that is insidious as fuck to me. But that's all I'll say on that.
I'm really glad you made that point. And just to end this episode, to bring it back to the overall theme of hashtag not a stripper, I've said this and I'll say it again. The reason we really wanted to make this episode was, as we can see by some comments we're getting on our YouTube videos, pulpit people do not understand why strippers have such hesitations and reservations around entering that space. And we have just explained to you the reasons why. And again, I said this in the last episode, like, how fascinating it is that people, especially women, do pole fit to empower themselves. And I will say, not that, now sex work doesn't need to be empowering to be valid and worthy of like us having decency and rights. But for me, and Madeline is the same, being a stripper was the most liberating, empowering thing I have fucking done for myself. It taught me to unlearn my people pleasing. It taught me my worth as a fucking woman. It got me out of shitty relationships with men. It raised my standards. Nothing has taught me to love myself besides my mother quite like being a stripper and a sex worker. And just again, I've said this in the last episodes, it's so interesting how people will look at pole fit as something empowering unless it's a stripper doing it. So that was a rant. We are getting really comfortable with being unfiltered, and, you know, I'm just waiting for the hate comments and people being like, oh my God, VIXEN sounds so aggressive. Look, I am here to speak my truth. Sometimes I get a little bit frustrated and just need to have a little vent, because it can be frustrating talking about this shit all the time and not having it land. But thank you to those of you who do listen and do listen to the rage and understand that where that comes from. There is like years of trauma fueling this rant. And thank you for receiving that with aroha and compassion. I see you, I respect you, and I appreciate you. And so, yeah, Madeline, do you have any final thoughts before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, I just want to like say to anyone who is, if you've made it to the end of this episode and you're feeling very confronted with this information, or perhaps the like aggressive nature of some of it, or the delivery, or whatever it is that's sort of causing some resistance in your heart, just remember that these are representations of perspectives that exist within the industry that are really important to be aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has the same opinion as VIXEN, or everyone has the same opinion as me. Some people have a much more ruthless opinion than two of us, and that is incredibly valid. And it's important to listen to these perspectives, to educate yourself and understand why these perspectives exist and that they do exist, because we can't keep moving through the pole industry as if all strippers are neutral toward pole dancing, because they're not. We just mostly in the pole industry only see strippers who are pro pole fit. There are so many sex workers who are anti pole fit altogether. There are so many people who wouldn't even be interested in being on a podcast that approaches this topic. And I get like shit in my AMAs from people who are like sex workers who are annoyed that I teach pole. And I support them in that. I'm like, valid, fair enough. Like, I understand that. And so if you are feeling that resistance to that, just remember it's actually just important for you to take in that perspective and understand it and try to have empathy instead of centering yourself and being really personally offended by that, because maybe it brings up something that you've done. Just remember that it is a perspective and there are so many reasons and things and events and abuse and trauma that informs every perspective that exists within the industry. And that's not to say that more traumatized people are more aggressive, because you can be completely traumatized and be docile. It's, but it's important to just listen and take it in and reflect on how it makes you feel and why it makes you feel that way. But yeah.
You have been listening to Stripped and Unscripted with Vixen Temple and Madeline Rose. Thank you so much again for those of you who have sent us a tip on Buy Us a Coffee. We really can't thank you enough. Aroha nui, tēnā koutou, and we will see you back here next week for Stripped and Unscripted.